when it's my partner, I have a lot more anger and frustration, and I have a lot more loneliness and resentment. So those emotions are just so very different between the two.
I don't know how could have survived without a support group. They were like listening to me and telling you she probably has this illness and whatever. And I was thinking, oh my God, why are these people believing me?
So yes, we are Schizophrenia, three moms in the trenches, but parents aren't the only people who experience serious mental illness in a loved one. With the help of our two guests, we explore living with and loving a partner with a serious mental illness. Welcome to our podcast, Schizophrenia, Three Moms in the Trenches. From the place where schizophrenia and real life collide. East Coast, West Coast, Middle America. With Miriam Feldman, Mindy Greiling, and Randy Kay. Welcome to the penultimate episode of Season 5 of Schizophrenia, Three Moms in the Trenches. Yes, I have enough brain cells left to say penultimate, even though I have a son with schizophrenia, as do my two partners in podcasting here, Mindy Greiling and Mimi Feldman. And we are covering a topic that many of you have said you would like us to cover, but we're not qualified to cover it. So we bring in guests, and our wonderful guests tonight are going to talk about living with and loving a partner who has a serious mental illness. Before we bring in Jeff Zuckerman and Annie Yeager, I want to mention a couple of things. The first thing is just a plug, a well-earned plug. One of our earliest and most popular guests on season 1 of our podcast was a judge whose name is Lisa Wexler. She's a probate judge in Connecticut. It's a 2-part episode. I believe it was season 1 that we brought her on. She's amazing because she's a mom as well. She is so whip smart, knows exactly what she's talking about. I do want to recommend Lisa's podcast. She runs a local radio talk show here in Connecticut, and some of her topics are local, but many are not. And I want to turn you on to her podcast, and it's lisawexler.com. lisawexler.com. And you can check out the podcast or just search wherever you get your podcasts and look for a couple of very specific episodes about schizophrenia. There are 2 I want to mention to you, and I thought of bringing these guests onto the podcast, and the moms will talk about it, and maybe we will. But the interview that Lisa did was so thorough that I'm just going to steer you over to her podcast. And one of them was about, which we have spoken about, the three moms, President Trump's plan to clear the land of homelessness. We hope it's to plan to help the mentally ill. And she interviews a wonderful doctor about that. And that doctor also has a great deal to say about cannabis as a public health crisis. So it's a fairly recent episode of the Lisa Wexler podcast. I want to steer you to that. And there's another one. And if you search her podcast, wherever you get your podcast, you can just kind of scroll through and see. So there is a new drug. It is not even in trial yet, but there is a doctor that she interviewed, and they are experimenting with micro doses of something similar to LSD. And I'm not recommending you do this. Don't do this. You'll see in the episode, but it was just anything that's exciting in research, I just love to hear about. And basically what they have found with the hallucinogenics, tiny doses that they are doing in rats. They have not done it on humans yet, but it is actually repairing damage in the frontal cortex, which I have never heard of before. Like we have spoken about, brain and neuropsychiatry and how the brain can somewhat rewire itself, but there's very promising results in the early stages of this medication. So again, they're not even getting near human trials at all, but it's always good to know that maybe something new is being worked on. So I just want to recommend Lisa's podcast. If you're on Instagram, she's lisawexler.radio. She also,
and I would say, before you go on, Randy, I would second that you sent Mimi and me the one about about the president's plan and so
Dr.
forth.
Schaffner, I think her name is. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Schaffner. I watched that one and I highly endorse what you're saying. And then I would also be interested in the guest on the research on the form of LSD. I read something that I think Dr. Laitman sent around about that. So anytime
Oh,
there's something new, we hang on to hope.
yeah, absolutely. And so I just want to steer you to Lisa. And also, she has a segment every once in a while because she is a lawyer and a probate judge called Lisa on the Law. And because she's a probate judge, she has a lot, again, she's not advising anybody, but just answering questions, a lot of information about estates and wills and third-party trusts. And I've been on her show a couple of times. She does a lot about schizophrenia, a lot of the probate cases that she judges are about schizophrenia because there happens to be a mental health facility in the town where she works. And so I just want to point you to her podcast because you might find some useful information there. And basically, the only other thing I just want to share that I'm having a good period with my son, Ben, because he's in jail. And so he's very structured and he's very sober and he's very much in treatment. And I'm enjoying talking to him right now. So I even said to him today, I like sober Ben. And he said, yeah, I do too. So we'll see if that sticks. You never know. But it's good to have a good moment. Mindy, you wanted to share something and then we're going to go on to
Yeah, our last episode or so was on negative symptoms. And I just had an example of that today with Jim. And he's not in jail, he is sober, but there are still problems. And his now is his housekeeper that's supposed to help him keep his apartment clean, which people with schizophrenia often need help with that. And he definitely does, especially his bathroom is in dire need. And this cleaner is a new person and she hasn't come for a month. And she came one other time and then not the time before that. And now she's, there's a he said, she said going on, but I happened to be there last week when she also wasn't coming. And she was not communicating well, and neither was Jim. They set another date, which was today, and she didn't come again. But while they were trying to communicate, if it had been me, I would have said, listen, you haven't been here for the last 3 times. And so let's make sure that we get it straight this time. And why have you been missing? But he didn't say any of that. He just took it and meekly said, okay, when she wanted to schedule, and now she doesn't show up again today. So people with negative symptoms can be taken advantage of because it's, unscrupulous people can just kind of imply that it's their fault that they are following the schedule or something. And he is following the schedule. So we're getting a new cleaner, but it's just a hassle and makes him feel bad and makes me mad.
And that's why we continue to advocate for our loved ones. Now, if you're new to the podcast, we are 3 moms. As you can probably tell, it's our sons that have schizophrenia. But today we're going to turn to another set of family members who might be living with someone who is their partner, a wife, a husband, a partner. And if that person has a serious mental illness, we have a story, we have hope. You guys can go ahead and turn your cameras on. We're going to be speaking with Jeff Zuckerman, who is a retired editor and reporter and writing instructor and social worker. And about 5 years ago, he published an award-winning memoir called Unglued, a bipolar love story. And this is one of the only books that zeroes in on the spouse experience when facing their partner's serious mental illness. He's also a NAMI support group co-facilitator for spouses and partners. And, personally, he has 2 kids and 3 grandkids. So same as me. And then Annie Yeager. And Annie is a health and wellness coach focusing on mindset shifts, taking back control of your life. Also from Minnesota. So I'm assuming, Mindy, you know these guys.
Minnesota, yay. I think
Long
it's
married.
Jeff Zuckerman, by the way, Randy Zuckerman. No, it's she got it
Zuckerman.
right. Okay,
Zuckerman.
oops, never mind.
See, you've known him longer and I said his name right. Okay.
Yeah.
Annie has 4 kids, and she's also a NAMI facilitator for 4 years. So welcome to both of you.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to the conversation.
So let's just start by asking you, a bit about your stories leading up to what you do. Like, what do you see as the differences between being married or partnered with someone with a serious mental illness compared to where we are being the parent of someone with a mental illness? Whoever wants to go first, raise your hand and we'll do it that way. Who's going first?
Raise your hand.
All right, Jeff.
Okay, so to some extent, it's conjecture because my kids do not have a serious mental illness. And I did get an education early on when I first started going to family support groups for NAMI family support groups, where some of the people were there as parents, and then there were fewer people there like me as a spouse. And I remember one guy saying, or one woman saying, well, it's harder for you because you're a spouse. And then you go to this whole thing and we don't compare. But her point was that spouses have to have a moral decision, unlike parents. You can't not be a parent of somebody, but spouses have to make that choice. And it's a tough choice. And it's a choice that some, people decide to leave, and some don't. And the question I was always asking myself was, how do you do the right thing when you don't know what the right thing is to do? And there's no guidebook, and you guys all know this. There's no guidebook on how to navigate all this, and it's different for everybody. So the moral decision is part of it. I don't know, Annie, I'll leave it there. I probably have more to say, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that was important what you said too. But I think one of the big things that when I was thinking about this is I feel like the loneliness that you feel as a partner of someone versus I feel like you have more people to talk to when it's one of your children. I think people are more receptive to give you advice or listen. And I think what we hear in our group and also what I experienced is that a lot of times people just say, why do you put up with that? Why do you stay? And of course they want what's best for you. They love you, and like when you're talking to your family, but that's not always the easiest thing to hear, and it's not really what you want to hear. So I think that is, one of the big obstacles. And I think, I have 4 kids and I have had kids that struggle. Like, I don't think they have anything diagnosed, but they've struggled with anxiety, they've struggled with depression. And honestly, my emotions are so very different between my spouse and my kids. I think with my kids, I sometimes, I just want to take it away from them. I just feel a lot more empathy. I just feel maybe a little more exhausted. And when it's my partner, I have a lot more anger and frustration, and I have a lot more loneliness and resentment. So those emotions are just so very different between the two.
Wow. I thought when I looked at that question ahead of time, I was thinking you were going to say you were going to talk about the loneliness. And I always say, and some people do this with children as a single parent. And I know Randy has done that for many years. But I always think I couldn't do this with Jim if I didn't have Roger, because I can bounce things off of him. He can be a soulmate. Neither of us are perfect, but we at least have each other to care just equally as much about Jim. But when you said what you said about the anger and should you stay, now that I think about that, I think I'm not sure I would stay with Roger if he treated me the way Jim has when he's been high and psychotic. So, wow, that's something to deal with.
Yeah,
One other thing too is um, a lot of people, and I had this experience to a degree, you have a spouse, but the spouse isn't in it with you, and you kind of are a single mother dealing with it. Happens a lot. that way where the fathers just can't cope. We've heard that a lot.
Yes, and I know that Jeff and Annie, your support group co-facilitators, and specifically for spouses, I think in your case, Jeff, I
Both of us we're
We're together.
co-facilitators, the same
oh,
group.
you've gone. Well, no, I do co with each other. Got it. Okay, so but I am when I can, a family to family NAMI teacher and actually the state trainer in Connecticut. So I help train other people to teach it. I've probably taught family to family between 15 and 20 times. And it is a huge percentage of those groups are parents. But there's always a few spouses. And when we break into relative groups, the spouses get a chance to talk to each other. And a few things stand out for me of what they would say to me as the co-facilitator. And one story was a woman whose husband was in and out of the hospital. I don't remember whether it was schizophrenia, bipolar, whatever it was. And she said, I had 3 young kids and I had to dress up as Santa Claus and walk down the stairs for the kids. So that's that loneliness and that anger. And I think whereas parents always get stigma and blame, what's wrong with your parenting, blah, blah, blah. Spouses probably get, well, why do you stay? And my first husband, the father of my children, I think he had problems. I don't think it was a serious mental illness, but he was an addict. And that question came up a lot. That question came up a lot. And so that leads me to, and people say also financially, this was supposed to be my partner who was supposed to help me financially, emotionally. You can't count on them. They're in the hospital. So when someone is supposed to be your partner, I think it's a different kind of dream that breaks. But
I was gonna
yeah, go ahead.
Well, we could talk about ambiguous loss and ambiguous grief and how it differs between when it's your spouse rather than your kids. I did want to say there's also maybe it's not just being a spouse, but a sense of a fear of betraying my spouse, my wife in any way, and also my kids were in their 20s when my wife's late onset bipolar disorder hit. And so then you're both being a dad and trying to be neutral. And my life's almost falling apart, but you don't want to, I didn't want to betray her. And yet I had my own experience, my own needs, and I was falling apart. I was the one becoming unglued. And how do you navigate that? Has been a learning experience with older kids, and maybe that reflects also your experience. But that word betrayal kind of came to mind.
I was going to add that, Jeff.
Go ahead, Annie.
No, I just was going to add on with what you said, Jeff. I was going to add that too about I think people are afraid to get help because they don't think it's their story to share. So they're reluctant to find someone to talk to reach out to people. That's all I was going to add.
All right, Mindy.
I was just going to say, speaking of ambiguous loss, this is kind of an aside, but Jeff and I were at the same event, the 100th anniversary of the University of Minnesota Press, and Pauline Boss was there. So we got to talk with her, and that was really exciting. She is well into her 90s and just as sharp, I think, as she has when she wrote her first book and coined the term ambiguous loss. So she is still an amazing woman.
And just, go ahead, finish.
I was just going to, the question I had though for our guests is, when we all know the game of teenagers playing one parent off the other, you ask one and they say no, and then you ask the other one, or get money out of one and not the other. How does that play out when your spouse has a mental illness? When you mentioned your kids are in their 20s, but even no matter what age, I think there's always some of that goes on in families. How does that work when your spouse has a mental illness?
Yeah, like it's just in general, how have your kids been affected by this? And I don't really know your story yet. I know, Jeff, you spoke about your wife. And I just want to mention that we do have episodes on ambiguous loss. I think was it Jerry who came? Jerry, anyway,
Jerry Clark, yeah.
Jerry Clark that came and spoke about that, and we do have a couple of other episodes of people who shared their stories about space. We haven't totally ignored you, but now I feel like we have experts here, and so let's talk about the kids. How have they been affected? How do you navigate your role as spouse and partner and parent in that regard?
I can go. My kids were young. My husband, you don't know my story. My husband he was hospitalized with psychosis, I think 3 times. And then in there navigated depression, anxiety. And my kids were young when it first happened. I believe they were like 8, 7, I don't know, 6 and 4, something like that.
Um,
So I often felt like a single parent. I remember people walking up to me in Target asking me if I needed help when I'd have all 4 of them. And I'm like, wow, I obviously don't look as good as I think I do. So, um, but I honestly felt like a single parent for most of those years. And I would say my partner was absent a lot. Um, and I was really good at being a victim of all of that, which is not good. But I feel like my kids probably felt that. They felt that anger within me and that resentment. Um, because how do you not feel that when you're kids? I will say now, though, as they're older, they're young adults and teenagers, they are very good at identifying their emotions. They're very good at like noticing, oh, I think I need to talk to somebody. I think I need to get some help because I'm not feeling quite right. I'm feeling, really anxious about, whatever I'm navigating. So I think it's kind of been normalized a bit for them to talk about their feelings, which is great. I did ask my oldest what he thought, and he said he did validate that he is, quick to get help, but he also said he has a real fear of losing control of his mind,
mm,
which I don't think that's probably normal for most 22-year-olds.
yeah. Is your husband stable right now?
Yeah, yeah, he is, and he has been for about 6 years. So,
That's
To
great.
hear it.
mm.
Jeff, did you want to add to that?
One thing that one thing that's comes up in our support group when this topic comes up is, and I'm not comparing this at all to a person who's abused, and yet there have been women and men who because of their spouses psychosis or severe episodes and stuff, they're essentially being abused. And that's the word. And there's been times when, you have to say it. And I'm just a facilitator. And yet it's abuse. And they hear that word. And you don't want to think. I didn't want to think of myself as abused, especially being a guy. And one thing that's come out of that is uh, uh, we're teaching our kids how to be an adult. We're teaching them how to be compassionate and how to be loving, how to be caring in a really difficult situation. For us, it's with your mom, your dad, and how to remain compassionate. At the same time, we're making choices. And I think about this a lot for women, especially if there's a financial problem. They're also showing their child that despite all this, I need to find the strength and the resilience to do what I need to do for me, and that it's okay to 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 put yourself first and to model how to navigate this stuff. And I'm saying that in a positive way, that it's a positive thing for kids to experience.
Thank you. Your wife also is, I mean, I did not read your book. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to do it, but it's 5 years old, so mine's 12. So I want to ask you, how is your wife now? How is your marriage now? Is she stable as
Yeah,
well?
yeah. Um, and just quickly, if you haven't read my book, she's been hospitalized 4 times, twice for mania, twice for severe depression, including one suicide attempt. She had a third episode of mania. They called it hypomania. Don't ask me what the difference is. 2 summers ago, that went on for about 4 months. Then she crashed. You guys know how that goes. So this last depression has gone on pretty much close to 2 years now. This is a good night because to me, I'm seeing little bits of gains, and in this form of depression, she's not lying in bed anymore, and she's doing stuff. And at the worst of those depressions, you don't get out of bed for 2 months. So we're way past that now.
I have read Jeff's book, so I'm going to put in a plug for it. It's Unglued, and it is an incredible book. And I was once asked at a book event for my book, if I could do it over again, what would be the one thing I would change? And the one thing I would change, it'd be to make it more like Jeff's book, because he has hysterical parts in there where I was just belly laughing. And that's my criteria for a good book or a good movie, that I learn something, that I cry, and that I laugh uproariously. And I did all those things with Unglued. I highly recommend it.
Thanks, Mindy.
All right, thank you. Um, so let's get on to what the heck do we do to cope? Mimi, do you have a question or?
I'm actually still stuck back at that word abuse. And I think we shouldn't go past that so quickly because I think it's an important issue. And I think that us moms, I know you have, Mindy, for sure, but all three of us have been certainly in a position with those sons where the way they were treating us and what they were doing was abuse. And it's hard to justify or make your peace with it. People would say to me all the time, well, you have to separate Nick from the disease. That was the disease talking. It wasn't Nick. You have to understand that separation. And yeah, theoretically, we can all understand that separation. But I always liken it to, if you had somebody with you who had a disease like, I don't know, Parkinson's, something where there was dyskinesia, there were involuntary movements. So if you loved somebody who had something like this and would do these involuntary movements and their arm would fling up and hit you across the face, yes, you would understand that it was the disease doing that, not the person, but it still hurts. You know what I mean? The result of the action is the same. And so you have to somehow come to terms with that and make your peace with that and protect yourself against that. I mean, I think it's a very complicated issue. And to say to separate the person from the disease, that's a folly. You know what I mean? When you're the one who's getting smacked in the face, deciding whose fault it is, the mythical disease or the person, none of that matters. You have to find a way to live with that and try and not get smacked in the face. So I just think it's an important issue.
We usually say we're the ones with the lasting trauma because we remember. They don't always remember.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's the same thing with the siblings.
Mhm. Yep.
And just because you extended the conversation, I just want to say that I've certainly learned through this, and maybe knew it before, but abuse isn't necessarily physical, it's emotional. And the experience of, I would argue, of emotional abuse can be as bad as physical abuse. And maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
Or worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Could
mean,
I
there's no
ask why?
answer
Oh,
here, but
go
I
ahead,
just think
Mimi.
it's important to
Go ahead, Mimi.
I said there's no answer here, but I think that it's
Oh.
important that we stress to the audience that this is not a small thing. This is a big component. in learning how to live with this.
One more corollary question. Why would you say, and what do people in your group say are the main reason or reasons that you do stay? Because like you said, we're parents, we don't have a choice, but you
Oh,
could
good
leave. And
question.
what are your main reasons for not?
I think it's different. There's so many, some people do it for religious reasons. Some people do it because they feel, I made this commitment, I'm going to see it through. Some people feel guilty. They don't feel like they can leave because this person isn't in a place to take care of themselves. Um, I, can you think of some more, Jeff? I mean,
Well, yeah.
there's so many different reasons
Well,
people.
well, well, the easy thing is to say that, well, some, especially women, but sometimes guys too, it's financial
And
and
kids, yes, good
and
point.
I try to be sensitive to that. I'm a white male with privilege and I have enough money. I was worried for a time there when I was sleeping in a tent and couch surfing to get away from the mania, and calculating, could I afford not to be there? But Annie, the main thing I want to add to what you said is I love my wife. And
Yeah.
through it all, I've never stopped loving my wife and caring. When she's manic, I can't live in the house with her, but I never stop loving her. And so,
Yeah, which is a really good segue into boundaries because I will say, and here I'm going to talk about my ex-husband, who I call William in the book. Again, not schizophrenia, but severe addiction. And there came a point where I almost wish he would get so bad that I had no choice for the kid's safety but to leave him. And actually, that is what happened eventually. So, he totally disappeared for 12 years, and I raised the kids alone. But, I knew on some level he did me a favor by disappearing because I didn't have the guilt of having left him. So, that was, there's more to the story than that. But I feel that dilemma. I loved him. The kids needed to know where he was. And eventually we did get closure when he nearly died in a homeless encampment and called us. And so there's a lot to consider if you're considering the kids and you're considering finances. But you consider love and you consider commitment, and everybody has to make their own decision based on all those factors. But a good way to find a way to stay is to set boundaries, which is what I do with my son. I love him. I always love him. I always support him. And I always say what I am willing and what I'm not willing to do for the safety of the rest of the family and the emotional well-being of the rest of the family, including my grandchildren. So how do you set boundaries? This could be a whole podcast, we know, but for yourself without that guilt or the shame.
wait, before Annie says this, I'm going to say in our support group, I tell them Annie is the queen of boundaries and
Ooh.
I am the king of not feeling guilt. So Annie, you go first about boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries I think comes up every single meeting when you say, Jeff. I mean,
Hmm.
it's something that is so hard to understand and grasp when you're first kind of getting into it. You can't differentiate between, well, what's an ultimatum and what's boundaries and how do I tell the difference between them? And I think the number one thing, and I guess too, with that, people think I'm I'm being mean by setting a boundary, and that's just not the truth. I mean, boundaries are meant to strengthen a relationship, not to hurt the relationship or pull it apart. And I think the thing that we say over and over again is that your boundary should always be about you, never about the other person. It's what you're going to do. So, if you can't have a conversation without yelling at me, I'm going to need to leave the room or I'm going to need to remove myself or whatever it might be. But yes, boundaries, I think in these relationships, you can't have a strong relationship without boundaries and communication.
Can I ask you, how does your husband feel about and react to the boundaries that you set for yourself? How does he respond to that or react when you're any examples or
Um, I think that he respects them. I mean, I've been doing it for a while now, and I am respectful of his as well. So, I don't know that we even need, it hasn't that much of an issue. He's, like I said, he's healthy, we're healthy. We probably have the best relationship we've had in the last 28 years. So it's a good place to be. And maybe it's because we have that open communication and we respect each other when we say, I can't, you know, I need my own place or my own, I need not my own place, but my own
Face.
space or whatever it might be. Um, you know, I think, yeah, we've learned. It's taken time. It's taken probably, 6 years, but and it wasn't easy at first, but yeah, I think he
And
get
it's
used to it
learning,
quick.
if you could, I love the tip of it's about me, it's not about you. Because yeah, when you are clear about your own boundaries, if this happens, then I'm going to need to do this, and you say it in a tone of voice that's strong but not accusatory. It's not about accusing. Well, you did this, so I'm going to do that. I mean, I do it with my grandchildren all the time. We would love to have you sleep over. Here's what we are willing to do, and here's what we're not willing to do. You're going to be in bed by this time. If you can set boundaries beforehand, that's great, but sometimes you set boundaries in the middle of a crisis. And what I know about boundaries is if it does come from an I place, it can't be argued with. You said, here's what I am willing to do. Right now, what I need to do is go into the other room. I even do it with the grandkids. Grandma needs a timeout. And I go give myself a timeout to get myself together so I don't add another layer on top of it. And that's the thing, going back to abuse, is like abuse hurts enough without putting a layer on top of it of like, I hate this person. That's where the disease differentiation comes in. When I learned my son had schizophrenia, I could stop hating him for abusing me. I still felt abused at times with the things he would say to me, but that it didn't add the extra layer of, I've entirely lost my son, because I could blame the disease. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Any other tips about boundaries like that you could be clear about? And then Jeff, you sounds like
I just want to make sure your listeners and viewers of the podcast, you you made it sound pretty calm. And I want to acknowledge that during a crisis, this is not going to be a calm thing to set these boundaries and to do what you need to do for you. It's probably going to be a lot of yelling and screaming because look, this is our lives with these serious mental illnesses. And so if you know that's where the books say one thing or people tell you one thing, but I'm pretty much a reality guy. And so, I just want to make sure that people get that.
That is important. We once had a no contact order through a judge with our son. He could not come to our house and he had to earn his way back again. What do you do and what do you advise your group members to do if boundaries that they're setting don't work? What are your comebacks?
Queen Annie, you take that one. That's a hard question. That's a hard
It is a
question,
hard
Mindy.
question. I know. I'm trying to think. I think usually what we just say is it takes practice and maybe try setting it a little smaller. Maybe try, making it a little bit or just keep putting it in place. I mean, I think again, it takes practice. It's not something that you're just going to get and figure out one time. And you know what? Somebody who you're setting a boundary against isn't gonna like it. You've been doing it one way for them or whatever it might be. all of a sudden you're changing the rules. That's just not going to be well received, probably.
This is kind of off the track, but I've been wondering this throughout the program. We are parents, you are spouses. Did you have any help from your spouse's parents? Have they dealt with mental illness with their child before you got married? Or even if they didn't, if they did or didn't, were they living? Were they helpful? Or did they leave it up to you? I always fantasize, if only Jim, got married to a good woman who would take care of him, I could just be so much happier.
I know, I like that fantasy too.
My
Here,
favorite
he's yours.
also. Every
Yeah.
caregiver. I'm like, does she have a husband? How old is she? So I always think that.
Well, it sounds like Jeff, your wife didn't get ill until much later, so I
She
don't.
was 57 years old when her first manic episode began.
And were her
So
parents still living?
No,
Okay, all right.
nor
Annie?
were mine.
Oh, wow.
That's a tough topic, really. No, they weren't helpful. I'm just gonna say that. I think there's, again, my parents wanted to protect me, and maybe there's a little bit of denial, like, this can't. Yeah, it just it wasn't very helpful. No.
Was it a hindrance too, or just not
A
helpful?
little bit, yeah, a little bit. And I shouldn't say that fully because of course they love it. We had a point where it just wasn't a good time for us to be in the same place. One of the psychosis was about me. And then I just, for my safety, kid safety, I was just like, you need to move out. And of course, they took him right in and helped him. I just knew, at that point, if psychosis, there was nothing I could say, nothing I could do that he would listen to. And they took him in and really helped work through that. So yeah, I mean, of course, they always would provide love and support, but for me, it didn't really help.
So I think that, and I know, again, you each have you run a support group, and you each have websites. And I know, Annie, you're a coach, and a lot of this comes up. You're a mindset coach and a hope coach, but I will. I think that boundaries are a huge part, and there's boundaries you set beforehand, and there's boundaries that come up during a crisis. And for me, the most helpful language I have used, again, not with a spouse, but a long time ago with my spouse, is like, um, this is how I'm feeling right now. This is what I need to do. And we can, what I am willing to do is talk again in 10 minutes if you're calm, or whatever it is. It's very I centered. What I am willing to do, what I'm not willing to do. If you set up the boundaries beforehand, you can kind of call back to those. But if you haven't, and you're in the middle of a crisis, I mean, even now, and my husband now, God bless him, is neurotypical. But if there's times when he's just like annoying me, I'll just say, you know what, honey, I need to go in another room for a while. And in a way, it's setting a boundary, and it's nowhere near the way dealing with my son. But it's just like, when you say I need, it's hard for them to argue with that. So I think setting boundaries and sticking to your guns. Sometimes just say, we agreed with this. And I will recommend that support groups and family to family have courses on communication skills that can really help with that. So, since you guys co-facilitate one of the few support groups for partners, can you talk about the benefits of support groups and coaching too, when you get to it? How does that help?
I'll go first. I will go first because I've been at this. I've been doing this now for 10 years. First as a participant, and I think it's about 7 years, maybe even longer, that I've been a facilitator. And it sounds like I don't know how I mean, it sounds hyperbolic. I don't know how I could have survived without a support group. I didn't my wife was undiagnosed those first few months 10 years ago, and you're really out there on your own. And you're believing everything. I thought, okay, what she's saying about me is true, and I'm a terrible person. All the stuff she was screaming at me, all that junk was real. So I go to a support group, and I couldn't believe it. They were being so supportive. Supportive. They were like listening to me and telling you she probably has this illness and whatever. And I was thinking, oh my God, why are these people believing me? Like I'm a guy, you know? And but they did. And I kept getting that kind of support those years and learning a lot, just flat out learning. And I don't know. And this has gone on now 10 years. I think I'm a pretty good, I know I'm a good facilitator. I'm good at it. So I'd like to think that I know that people really benefit. They tell us and it's they learn. And one thing I'll say about our NAMI support groups, ours for sure, there's not very much advice given. It's more about listening and asking questions and stuff, hearing other people's experiences. And you know what? That's what people really want. They just want to be heard in that stuff. And they really don't even want advice for the most part. We give them resources, and I don't know. I could probably talk way more about that stuff. Annie?
No, I think you covered it. I think people just want to be heard, and so many times when we get somebody new, and I felt this way too when I found the support groups, you just all of a sudden you're not alone anymore. All of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, you had the same experience as me. Like I thought I was the only one. So it's just that being in a shared space with people who get it.
I have a
Yeah.
question for
And
you, Jeff. We're all
yeah.
mothers, including Annie. How many males versus females come to your groups? And do you, Jeff, have any tips that you give to people that are germane to being male, or are they all equally useful for both sexes?
Hmm. I can't think about right off the top of my head. I can't think of anything specific because it's men. Man, you guys, so we get people. I mean, we're talking. We're online now. Before the pandemic, we were face to face. We get people, in their cars or their trucks they don't want their spouses to hear them. They're sitting out in a truck telling this stuff. And, some guys, it's so hard for them. They can barely start talking. And because they're so not used to sharing their feelings, and we roll with that, you only have to talk if you want to, and they might start. And I mean, that's kind of sad when I see that, and yet they found us. It was weird. I always remember before the pandemic, one time we met face to face, it was like 9 guys and one woman. It was, I don't know how that happened. And for sure now it's majority women, unfortunately. Yeah, because here we are, 2025. So it's mostly women now.
And how do people find you? Do you have people all over the country? Are they just in Minnesota, or how do you hook up with people who need you?
Annie, I've been talking too much.
Oh, no, you haven't. But the platform is through Hey Peers now, and people find us everywhere. We get people from even we've had Australia, England. We get people from everywhere. I think we still get the majority from Minnesota, I think. Don't you think? No, not necessarily.
Maybe it's
Maybe.
it's
Yeah,
man. Yeah, we get a lot of people from out of state.
we
And
do.
NAMI
You might get a
Minnesota, by
lot
the way,
more after
supports
this podcast.
Yeah, you might. So tell me,
We welcome all.
they find you how, and when and where are the support groups? How often are they, and how do they find you? I'll give you each a chance to throw in a few plugs, and of course the information for the resources. Annie, since you're talking, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, we're on the NAMI Minnesota website. The support group is, and then if you just search Hey Peers, is another place that they can find the spouse support group.
Can you say that again? Because I didn't understand
It's
it.
called Hey Peers. It's where NAMI now puts. Oh no, not that.
No, I don't know what it is. Can you
Oh,
spell it?
It's yeah, Heypeers. Hey
Oh,
Peers.
hey, people.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's the
here's
platform that NAMI is now using for all of its support groups. NAMI Minnesota is. So
is that a
all of the support
website
groups.
like heypeers.com or
Yeah.
Mhm, yes. Mhm.
And
okay, hey,
there's like 1,000 different support
Yes.
groups there,
Yes.
and and people can search it. And I assume they search for support group for spouses or something, partners, something like
wow.
that.
Okay.
Um,
And Annie, while you're talking as a mindset coach, where do people find you?
Yeah, my website is just my name, AnnieYeager.com. And because like I mentioned earlier, I pretty much put myself as a victim for 12 years, and it took me a very long time to make that shift and wait a minute, I like have a choice here. I don't have to feel that way. So which is what led me to get my certification, my board certification as a coach. And hopefully I can shorten that lens for other people to not have to do that for 12 years.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And Jeff, same question. How do people find you? Tell us where they find your book and so forth.
well, find me. Well, wait, I know that therapists will recommend their clients come find a support group. I don't know if it was a friend or a therapist was the one who told me about it. And that was 2015. So everything was face to face back then. So you show up, and I think that's how a lot of people find us is that way. Or I don't know. We don't even ask. I don't know. We just
They
say we're
just show
glad you
up.
found us.
Yeah.
We're
Right.
glad you found us. They find my book, Unglued, a bipolar love story, on Amazon and on bookshop.org by order at your neighborhood bookstore. And yeah,
And jeffzuckerman.com, right?
jeffzuckerman.com. Yeah. And I'm a bad salesman. I don't like to peddle my book during a support group meeting. It feels a little bit sketchy, but those who have read it will say, Jeff, well, I read your book and it was just great. And so I go, but that's, it feels icky to do that myself.
Well,
That's a
whoever,
problem with Minnesotans. We do not market ourselves well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm in California, nobody seems to have a problem with that.
No,
well, any last words? I know, Jeff, you said you're the king of guilt and you didn't talk about that a lot. We have about
the
two
king of
minutes
not
left.
guilt. No, no, no.
King
I
of
don't
not
do
guilt.
guilt.
No, I thought you were the king of like talking about guilt and not having it.
Well, uh, I know, and I'm Jewish, and it's funny. It's a Catholic, or sometimes we have a Catholic facilitator. He talks about the Catholic guilt, but NAMI principle of support number 8 is we forgive ourselves and we reject guilt. And you say that at the start of every meeting. And I don't know when it was, it really started clicking for me. We reject guilt. And I just do because I know I'm a loving husband. I know I'm a good father. And here's a key thing is that my son said to me, I think 6, 7, 8 years ago, Dad, I need at least one healthy parent. And that has so stuck with me.
Wow.
So I do take care of myself now. I'm lucky. So I got grandkids on each coast in New York, and in Oregon. And so I'm lucky. I go out there and I see those grandkids. They help me feel better. I get love from them. And I'm so lucky my wife supports that. She supports me doing what I need to do for me. And so it makes it easier for me not to have guilt.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you stated it that way because one thing we touched upon very slightly was self-care. So the last thing I'm going to ask you go around, do you have a tip for self-care?
You
Anything
go,
else to say? I think, Jeff, you've kind of said it. Annie, anything to add about that?
I would say take care of yourself, get the help that you need. Don't, it's so easy to get wrapped into somebody else's illness, but put yourself first because it's important. It's important to take care of yourself and take that time for yourself because you need it. So,
I'll say quickly that most of the people who show up in our support group are getting therapy for themselves. And that's so important. Another thing is, I heard you guys talking about this on a different podcast. I get it. Like taking a bubble bath in the winter is self-care. Going for a walk around your block. If nothing else, go for a walk around your block. But kind of along with what Annie is saying, I've heard you all say, self-care is more than just a bubble bath. It's a perspective on how to live a meaningful, loving life with gratitude. And that's what I try to work on, and compassionate and retaining that to maintain your sense of who you are in difficult times. So
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Agree.
Right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeff and Annie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
hey, yo, ever since I was a little kid in Pittsburgh, I wanted to be on a podcast someday. So thank you.
Or their
Check off
podcast
that
when you were a
bucket
little
list.
kid.
I was gonna
Thank
say,
you
wait a
so
minute.
much.
Thank
All
you.
right. And for episode 125, just so you know, we're going to be interviewing some fantastic team of practitioners from Silver Hill Hospital about reimagined lives and schizophrenia. So that's coming up. And thank you for listening and sharing our podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Schizophrenia, 3 Moms in the Trenches. You can help out the podcast and help others by sharing the podcast and by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts and or on YouTube. And remember, you can reach us at mindygreiling.com, randyk.com, or miriam-feldman.com.